Hi there. Today is my 60th birthday. I was born in 15261. 61 sort of halfway through the last century. And I guess it's time to take stock. Uh, the point of this video is to not to go on about the fact of my birthday, but to cover perhaps a relevant issue. Um, a couple of years ago, I've been through a bad patch, like the last couple of 4 years really, and I was fearful of the future, which I still am to a degree. Frustrated about the present, very frustrated. In fact, if it was one F word that I would describe my world and my mind, present with frustration, and then full of regret about the past. So fear, frustration, and regret, the three-headed monster of existence. A lot of people have this fear, frustration, and regret, and so I was really, really quite full of these emotions very, very strongly, especially the regret, and how my life would have been if I had been a bit less lazy in life and a bit more focused and a bit more together and stop sort of, drifting around, like a character from like the character from War and Peace, and I don't know, lots of different things without going into details really, like a lot of people regret. And then obviously last year, COVID-19 came along, with friends, and variants. And I suppose there's a couple of things from COVID-19. One, it is as if the Lord of this world is saying to humanity, I'll give you something to cry about. You've all been complaining and moaning about me and about my representatives, in your society, in the human world, and here's something you can really get upset about. And COVID-19, as is the way of the world, puts a lot of our frustrations, regrets, and fears into perspective. And as I say, here's something that you can really cry about. And yet, for some people, obviously, there's been tragedy, loss, economic ruin, death in the family, guilt, um, confusion. And for other people, there's been economic opportunity, and growth, and a certain amount of a certain amount of "I told you so" kind of thing, really, especially the Brexiters, because the EU completely, as usual, spectacularly made a mess of the COVID vaccine. And Britain's done very well, and timely as well. Came out of the EU just in time to be able to vaccinate 12, 14 million of its population against COVID. Whereas if they'd stayed in the EU, they would have been absolutely banjaxed, like a lot of countries in Europe. And but we're not going to go into Brexit again. That's old history. But I'm just going. It's surprising that the Brexiteers have not been crowing about this. I'll tell you one group of people that's going to shut up, and that's the Scottish National Party, because they are doing so well out of being members of the United Kingdom. Whereas if Scotland had gone on its own, it would have been very, very, very in a miserable situation at present, like a lot of small countries in the EU, in the European Union. So I suppose the Brexiters have been completely vindicated, actually, over this issue of COVID, at least. Of course, it remains to be seen what the long-term economic effects of Brexit will be. But I will say one thing: the countries that vaccinate their populations first will gain an economic advantage over other countries that haven't, and for various different reasons. And so, therefore, the race is on to vaccinate your population if you're a country. And the second point to be made is it's funny how selfishness actually wins the day. Whereas all this idealism about the European Union is absolutely made a mess of everything, quite frankly. And we do find that indeed idealism and utopianism actually very often causes more harm than good, which is you'd expect that in the lower worlds. You'd expect that in this world. You know, there's from a shadow comes good, from the white light comes evil, from utopianism arises tragedy and anarchy and tyranny, and from pragmatism and so-called selfishness arises a common good, a commonwealth even. But there's, that's a spectrum and a generalization because, generally speaking, we live in a amoral universe, if not an immoral universe. And, we have various choices to make. And the fullness of spirit is a universe which is entirely moral. That's one of the characteristics of heaven, in inverted commas, is that it's a moral sphere in which you don't have to break an egg in order to make an omelette. You don't, you don't have this tough love kind of situation arising. You don't have to be ruthless in order to be ultimately good. And selfishness is not rewarded, whereas it is in the lower worlds, and so on and so forth. But as far as regret is concerned, my own regret, I must say that I'm beginning to understand now that if my life had been anything else than it is at present, um, and the relationships that I presently enjoy, if I've had any other relationships, long term or short term, they would have been under severe stress at this time of COVID-19. And in fact, I really ought to have, looking at it pragmatically, I ought to have absolutely no regrets about the past whatsoever. And I know it's a cliche that people trot out that you shouldn't regret the past because the past is, the past is history and the future is a mystery, and you only have the present and the now. And I'll come back to this interesting topic in another video because it's really quite significant and fundamental to the understanding of Gnosticism as a way of life. But you do have regrets. But the weird thing is that COVID-19 has really made those regrets go away from me altogether. I realize now that my life is incredibly fortunate as a result of the decisions that I've made and the paths that I've taken with respect to COVID. And I suspect that I'm not the only one. A lot of people might be saying, "Goodness me, if I'd gone any other direction in life, I would have been really, really quite in a bad way now, and my dreams would have been kind of shattered by COVID-19, and I'd have to be madly adapting to the situation as it is now, just to tread water, just to keep going." Whereas actually, my situation now is incredibly suited to COVID-19. So if you've got no regrets about the past, then what does that mean about the present frustrations? Obviously the frustrations I think have grow almost exclusively out of the regrets about the past. So if you're not regretting the past, then the frustrations of the present are less, much less, in fact, much less acute. But still, of course, you still have fear of the future. And as we know, fear is the big thing about the lower worlds. Fear of the future, fear of scarcity, fear of change. These are the kind of things that really, really upset people all of the time in various different ways. And fear is what we're ruled by. The ruler of this world rules us through fear. However, as I've been over this before, you can't replace fear by recklessness. Because that will really give you something to cry about later on. So you've got a balance between caution, let us say, and and being relaxed about things, but not too relaxed. It's like in yoga. You're not relaxed in yoga. Your muscles are braced. That's the way to actually understand yoga. And they tense up and then they release. But whilst you're holding, your muscles are not relaxed in the sense of being, sort of being a slob, slumped in an armchair. Your muscles are active and yet they're actively relaxed. So if you like, your body is cautious in the way that it's looking at and maintaining the posture in yoga on one hand, and yet it's doing it in a kind of chilled out, sort of stylish kind of way, and not a madly tense sort of way. Um, but it's not, as I say, it's a balance between sort of being too chilled out and being not chilled out at all. It's kind of like super chilled, which is not the same as being chilled out, if you know what I mean. So there's being chilled out and then there's being chilled out. That's the only way to describe it, really. So, as I say, COVID-19, you think of COVID-19 as a complete disaster, but for some people, it's changed their lives. For some people, it's given them new perspective on life. And generally speaking, disease can actually do that. If you have something in your life, a condition which hits you, like cancer or MS or motor neuron disease or any other degenerative chronic disease, often these diseases can actually change the way you look at life. And suddenly you begin to look at life completely fresh, in a fresh way, and perhaps, dare I say it, an improved way, as a result of your condition. So bad things arise from good things, and good things arise from bad things. That's the way of this world. This world, and I sort of wave my hand around at everything in the room here. This world. It's a sort of a kind of a phrase in Gnosticism. This world. Because the next world, which is also arising inevitably, as it were, is going to be a very different world, a world that we can really hardly conceptualize. And if we conceptualize it intellectually, we almost can't. And we have to actually lose ourselves in order to be able to even get a slight glimpse of what that world might be like. Through meditation or prayer or ritual or dance or work, or something which takes you out of yourself completely, or even pain and fear, I suppose, really. You've got a mountainside and you've got a real fear to worry about, not just a neurosis, not an imaginary fear, but a real fear, and that helps you grow as a character. But at any rate, the world that is going to come next is a world which really sort of I don't know. I could completely flip it over on its head, but I go beyond taking an object and flipping it over on its head. The object is no longer there. The object is so transformed that it's not one thing or the other. It's nothing that you can ever imagine. And as I said, it's a world where you don't have to break eggs to make an omelette. That's kind of that's the kind of the short way of looking at it. In this world we have to break eggs in order to make omelettes. In the next world we won't have to do that. Neither will we have be faced with scarcity or death. And that changes everything. That changes your perspective. So just as COVID-19 has changed a lot of people, a lot of people's perspectives, so entering into the next world from this world will completely change and transform everything that you've ever thought about or ever made or ever thought, ever thought about, really. But on the other hand, we do have glimpses of such a change or such a transformation in this life, where you meditate or do something, contemplate the psychopomp, the priest, and the physician of spirit, which people call Jesus. We look at the Jesus prayer and the rosary, and suddenly we find ourselves glimpsing at what might be or what actually will be inevitably ahead of the people. But finally, it's just to say, that we are not bad people, but bad things have happened to us. And you can make a situation worse by reacting badly to a bad situation. And whilst you're busy arguing and fighting with people, things are getting worse around you. But if you cooperated with other people, things might get a little bit better, and you might learn a lesson about that, about cooperation rather than competition. So there's plenty to learn in this world, but there's going to be plenty more to experience in the next world. And Gnostics do look at what is to come without any sort of fear, in fact. And from that fearlessness arises a non-frustration with this world, and certainly a lack of regret about what has happened to you in the past. And in any event, all the past will be shed. Just as a snake sheds its skin, so everything about this world will be shed, including your past, your present, and your future, as it were, in this incarnation. So these are my thoughts for my 60th birthday, and I hope that they're sort of some vague use to you, even though it's not your birthday.